All right, I'm live, and there's a lot going on here. So first off, I want to show you the 18-year-old Prince T-shirt that I have for the U.S. Open, but it just says New York 2004. Anyway, and then I've got my Walking Dead mug, which I purchased in Lenoir, Georgia, at the site where they filmed The Walking Dead, which is pretty awesome, right there in the gift shop, I must say. And I liked that show for quite some time, but it lost me at the very end. How sad is that when a show loses you? But anyway, today, as I drink my roasted dandelion tea with a little bit of ginger in there, sounds gross, but I have some little additives that I put in there that make it a little more tasty, but that's for a really nice detox. Anyway, the wind. You have to play in the wind. And it's a really subtle thing. And people used to say this for a long time that, quote, the Eskimos have 5,000 words for snow. Well, it turns out not to be true. And we're probably more accurate if we call them Inuits, but there are probably also some other people groups in there. So hey, you know what? Let's call them what they are. So the Inuits have many words for snow, but the idea is a good one. That you need to have a nuanced understanding of these different things, and the wind is one of those. So if you play indoors, then you get to play in a seemingly perfectly still environment, and that's conducive to a lot of good things for the power player and for the pressure, time, and space player, because that ball's not going to be blowing around. They're going to be able to put their toss right where they want it, and they're going to have a lot more regular placement of the ball. The ball's not going to move around much. And there are different ways to think of the wind. So there's the speed, there's the direction, there's how changeable is the speed. Is it a consistent speed like all the time? Or does it change direction? And then sometimes you get this really chaotic wind that's swirling and going this way and going that way and speeding up and slowing down. So there are a lot of different things that play into that. But let's take it at the most basic level. If the wind's blowing at about 5 miles an hour, it's still going to move the ball around a little bit, even at 5 miles an hour. At 10 miles an hour, you're probably going to notice it. You're going to feel it. You can be like, oh, there's a little bit of wind, but it's not having a dramatic effect on the ball, but it is having a subtle effect. And then about 15 miles an hour, then you're really going to see, the ball moving around a little bit more, and it'll become slightly challenging. Over 20 miles an hour, and now things get really difficult. Things start to get really difficult when it's 20 miles an hour and over. And then I'll tell you what, if there's ever a day that has 30 miles an hour wind or more, then I do not teach lessons on that day unless there's a player who really desperately needs to learn how to play in the wind. Because it's just hard to get good value out of a time when the wind is blowing by that much. So you have different levels. Now, put a 5 mile an hour wind going that way, along with the court sort of sloping that way, and then the ball on this side is going to jump towards you, and on that side it's going to jump away from you. And so there's a little subtle adjustment that people don't make necessarily in terms of getting in position to hit the ball very cleanly. All right, now, I'm about ready to post a blog post on this. So I have something written and you can read all of this in more detail, but I just kind of want to give an overview today. So let's talk about the different kinds of wind. So there's consistent wind going in the same direction. So That's pretty simple to adjust to. So if it's going in the same direction, I got distracted by a text. Sorry about that. If it's going in the same direction, then it's not that hard to make an adjustment. The ball's going to be blowing that way a little bit. And then if I'm on the other side of the net, then it's going to be taking things the opposite way. And so got to adjust that footwork a little bit. So if it's going the length of the court, then it's adding some speed to your shots going that way. And if it's going this way, it's subtracting some speed from your shots. The stronger that is, the more trouble that can be for the power player. So the power player is going to have to, their shots going into the wind are going to slow down, maybe making it easier for the opponent to get that ball. Going the other way, then they might have to take a little something off of their shots because the wind might blow the ball out. Then you have the wind that's going, the consistent wind going across the court. So it's essentially shifting the court that way. So balls over here are going to blow in and balls over there are going to blow out. But how often do you really truly get a wind that comes at 90 degrees or 0 degrees? There's always going to be some kind of a diagonal to it. So, and sometimes it will go from one corner of the court to the other. And that's very interesting because if you hit with that wind, then that ball can really be carried off the court. So a nice, heavy, high top spin shot to that corner that bounces fairly close to the corner is going to pull the opponent way off the court. And then they're going to have to hit into the wind coming back. All right, I'm going to wave to a bunch of people on Instagram. So thanks for watching on Instagram. Sorry, I'm not looking at you because I'm looking at my computer because I'm talking on my YouTube right now. YouTube, Facebook. So I'm live on some different things right now. So anyway, and then conversely, you go back the other way and that ball is going to land shorter. So you're really going to have to hit through that wind going the other way. That's going to be kind of difficult. So that's a consistent wind. And sometimes what you get is the direction of the wind is pretty consistent, but the speed changes. So all of a sudden, it's going pretty good. And then you're about to hit a shot and then it just stops. Or you're getting a gust and then it stops. So you have to be careful with your toss at that time. So if if you have a steady wind, then you might toss here knowing that the ball's going to get blown over a little bit that way or that way. So you adjust your toss. But then if all of a sudden the wind stops, then you might have to catch your toss. You might have to not swing at that ball because your toss got blown away from where you were going to make contact. So that's an important thing. All right, then you get wind that changes direction, and that gets a little tricky because first it's going this way, then it slows down, then it goes that way, then it slows down. Then it speeds up, then it slows down, then it goes that way. All right. Hello, Angela. I'm not going to be talking to my people on Instagram very much, but that was my one hello. So, all right. So you get this changeable wind, and that's something you got to be careful of. So you have to pay attention to, you're making this shot, and all of a sudden you feel this gust going that way, right? Then you probably don't want to go for too much of an angle over there. Then the next thing that happens is you can have this really swirling wind and it's going all over the place. So that can be a major problem because now the predictability of the shot is not helped very well. So let's break it down a little bit more into who it helps and who it hurts. Because one of the maxims of tennis that is not particularly accurate, and so I would call this sort of an obtuse statement, is that the wind is the great equalizer. And so I'm going to say yes and no. So for the player who lacks skill, then the wind can mess up the match enough that it makes it more difficult for the more highly skilled player to make their shots. So in that regard, yes, but in another regard, no, right? Because let's take the case where the wind is going pretty heavily that way, and the servant volleyer's coming in, and then the returner has to hit into the wind with their shot. There's a decided disadvantage to the returner in that regard. But then flip it around. You go to the other side, and that servant volleyer, that player coming to the net, is going to be facing stronger shots coming their way. So, there's going to be a little bit of a disadvantage. Or maybe what they really need to do is not come so close to the net, because the danger of an offensive lob is so much greater. So one side to the other can change the way it's played. Into the wind, a movement player is probably going to want to hit the ball to the sides, because that ball is going to be pushed down for greater angles and a lot more movement sideways. With the wind, that movement player probably wants to play a lot deeper to the corners, maybe even slightly more into the center of the court, because the ball could be blown out going for angles. So, very interesting and subtle things that go on that way. Now, for the disruptive player, probably the worst thing to happen for a disruptive player is for there to be a swirling wind, because they're trying to use their ability to have really excellent timing with their slice shots and with their drop shots and their heavy topspin and all the little crazy shots that they want to hit, that a little disruption in that can throw them off. But I don't think there are any really hard and fast rules. There could be players who just love the fact that wind creates an even greater effect of unpredictability to their shots. So it kind of has to do with the comfort level of the person. So another important aspect about the wind is when it's a steady wind, then you can adjust your footwork a little bit. When the wind starts becoming less consistent, then you have to kind of wait a little bit longer to see what is the last little thing that's going to happen. Is there a little sudden gust that's pushing that ball this way or that way? So you kind of have to hold on to your footwork a little bit before you really settle down to hit your shot. Otherwise, you might get into a situation where you have to make a sudden lunge for a ball, and there's chance of injury with that, but also greater chances of making an error. And that is accentuated more and more by how changeable is that wind, and it's when it's swirling and changing speed and all that, then really the onus is on a player to take account for how many shots that they make that they're disappointed with, and how many the opponent makes that they're disappointed with. And generally speaking, the player that has a better attitude about playing in the wind is going to have an advantage over someone who is hating life at that time. So whenever I've coached competitive players and we're having a windy situation coming up, I like to tell them that their mantra should be, the wind is my friend. So, and that what they ought to do when we can put our heads together, if there's a coaching situation, where we're going to talk about, when the wind is like this, then you're going to hit like that. I have had the pleasure of coaching in a couple of different places that had very unique wind behaviors that were, unique, that gave us a home advantage because we knew how to play there. We knew that going that way, you're going to hit lots of high, heavy topspin. And then coming this way, you're going to hit flat, or you were going to hit slice, or you were going to hit heavy, very angled topspin shots. If you were going that way, then you would close in on the net very closely, because a ball going over is going to slow down and stand up, and you're going to be able to cover that lob, no problem. Going this way, if that ball goes over your head, good luck, because you're going to have to sprint back to get a racket on that thing. So having an understanding of how a certain condition at a certain place makes a difference in how you're going to play. And, it's one thing that's interesting to me is I've had some players that are now moving around with me to different courts. So we started at this one place, and the wind conditions were a certain thing. Then we moved down and we played in the lower courts that were more protected, and that was different. And now we've gone to one park and the wind kind of goes across this way, and we go to another park and the wind kind of goes that way. And so it's pretty unique in that now they really truly understand the subtle differences in how the ball moves around based on different conditions of wind in different locations. So I live here in the Bay Area of California, and I'll tell you what, there are two places I do not ever want to play tennis ever again. And they are Fairfield, California. And if you know what I'm talking about, raise your hand. By the way, if you're watching this, tell me where you're watching from. What city and state are you watching from? I would like to know where you are. And then another one is a place called Foster City, which is along the bay. And man, that place gets this wind tunnel effect where the wind goes right across the courts. And so you get the ball that, it's going to be, it looks like it's 3 feet out, and then it gets blown in behind you. That is not a lot of fun. Coto de Casa. Oh my goodness. That's the land of Vic Braden. So Angela, have you ever been to, and she used to live in Foster City. Unbelievable. But have you ever been to the Vic Braden College in Coto de Casa? So Coach Irwin's watching. What's going on? It's very windy, and I have it sideways, so I can't really read stuff that's going up the screen that way. But thanks for tuning in. All right. Oh, nice. All right. So hey, you people right there, I'm getting a lot more interaction from my Instagram people. So where are you? I need you to talk to me here. So I'm going to circle back and look at some of these comments later on Instagram and answer those more thoroughly. But the idea is, think about whatever your style is. If you're a power player, maybe you're one of those people who can hit through the wind. And maybe you're one of those people who needs to change the way you play because you need your good timing in order to play powerfully. If you're just going to make a bunch of errors, what's the point in that? So you might want to play differently. But if, like Andre Agassi, he would shorten up his backswings, and they would talk about how he was hitting through the wind. And so one player's playing and their ball's going like this, and Andre's hitting right through. So he maintained the accuracy of his shots while the other player's shots were more unpredictable. I can't explain that. But if you can hit through these chaotic conditions, then good for you. And then if you're the pressure, time, and space player, then in some regards, the wind is going to help you. So you have to maximize that. And then in some ways, it's going to hurt you because, if the wind's going sideways, then passing shots can go around you. If the wind's at your back, you can close in. If the wind's, in your face, then lobs can get over you much more easily. If you're the pressure movement player, then, if you're hitting into the wind, you can create more angles. But if you're hitting with the wind, then you have to be careful because your balls can be blown out. And you're probably going to want to keep the ball a lot deeper in that situation. If you are the disruptive player, then you just have to mind your timing a little bit better. So, maybe under normal conditions, you can time the shots perfectly because that's, how you're comfortable. But, you add that wind factor. And so a lot of it's going to have to do with your footwork and having nice, clean contact with the ball. And then finally, the one player who is helped the most by bad wind conditions is the grinding retriever player, because all the other 4 styles, which require a lot more skill and offense, that skill and offense is mitigated partly by the wind, especially if those people get frustrated. So when it says, when the at the maxim says that wind is the great equalizer, well, it's the greatest equalizer for that particular style of play. And really, if you play intelligently and you have a great game plan, then you're going to adjust your game plan based on how the wind conditions are that day. So play smart, think about how this kind of wind is affecting this particular shot or this tactic, and then you can add a tactic or you can subtract a tactic or 2 from your menu of what you're doing that day based on what the wind's doing. But if you're really stubborn and you try to play something that's not working, and it's just you're playing right into the teeth of the wind and it's giving an advantage to your opponent, then that's just not very bright. So anyway, the blog is going to be coming out a little bit later, and I'm writing in detail. It's a first draft, and the Tennis Strategy 201 book, I'm working pretty feverishly to get that ready before Black Friday today. And then, And then another important note is that next week I'm going to be on with Amanda Fink, and we're going to talk about our favorite our favorite clinic formats, and what are the best practices in running great clinics. So whether you're a player or a coach, you might want to come and watch that, because if you're a player and you can go to your coach and you can say, hey, I was learning this new thing about clinics and how if we add this one little nuance, it's going to be better. Quick note on that. One time I was running a clinic and I had a certain format that I was running, and the ladies liked it. It was fine. I mean, they enjoyed it. They kept coming back, and numbers were growing and whatnot. But one time I had this lady, and she had just moved from Florida, and she shared with me this format, and she's like, here, we could do it more like this. What do you think? And so I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And then a really amazing thing happened. Everybody really loved that format. And so I've actually used that at every other location that I've been to, and it's been very popular. Not everybody loves it perfectly, but it does create an opportunity, and I'm going to get into that. So you can tune in next Monday. We're going to do that. It's going to be 12:30 Pacific, 1:30 Mountain Time next Tuesday. So take a moment, please like and subscribe, and hey, go to my YouTube, brainsports.coach, and subscribe to my YouTube, you Instagram people, and like and subscribe, and tell me where in the world you are, city and state, please, because I had somebody say I'm on the East Coast, and I'm like, okay, well, it's a big coast. So, and then also go out there and vote, people, and then try to remember also the things that people said 2 weeks ago, because if they change what they're saying this week based on what they said 2 weeks ago or a year ago or 2 years ago, then pay attention to that stuff, because it's really important to make sure that people do what they say they're going to do. All right. And otherwise I'm not going to comment on that. So you don't need to know where I'm at on that. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.